Tonight we are going to be talking about our spiritual friends groups. And some of you are, perhaps several of you, are members of spiritual friends groups, but we want to talk more deeply about them. And some of our people here, all of them, who are members of groups, will share their experience, just to give you kind of a firsthand experience or indication of what these groups are. And so let me say that, our practice isn't easy, our spiritual practice. And along the way, I think we need all the support we can get. And that's what we give each other. I think, first of all, coming here on Tuesday nights, you don't even have to know people that well, but we're all doing the same thing. We're all working to expand our awareness using mindfulness and sometimes other practices as well. So that's what we're doing. The Buddha spoke often about what's been translated as lovely friends are as spiritual friends. It's Kalyanamitta is the Pali word, spiritual friendship. And he's talked about the importance of it. He said he knows no single factor that is as important as having a spiritual friend along the path. And so this is what we're doing. Thich Nhat Hanh said it another way. I love Thich Nhat Hanh's statement. He said, I walk for you, you breathe for me, we awaken together. Isn't that beautiful? I walk for you, you breathe for me, we awaken together. So this is what we're doing. And so here, what we're trying to do at IMCC is implement this and honor the importance of spiritual friendship by having formed several spiritual friends groups. These, by and large, are groups of 8 to 10 people, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. It's not that rigid. And they are not led by a teacher. They're peer led. We meet every other week, usually, but each group just makes their own decisions. Usually for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. And the whole point of our spiritual friends groups are to bring this practice into your daily life. And each group is a little different. Usually there's a meditation component, maybe at the beginning, some kind of check-in, how are you doing? But it's not simply to talk about problems, but how do you apply your issues, or how do you apply the practice? How do you make it alive in terms of your issues? So this is what we're doing. And kindly, we have 4 people here, 3 groups, 4 people who have kindly volunteered to tell you something about their experience tonight. So why don't we start? And I think we're going to start down here with, let's just go this way. Ed, would you like to start? Ed Spellman. Thank you. Ed, here is I don't know if you're going to need it, Ed, but you got it. You'd like it.
Okay.
And you can stand, sit, whatever is comfortable for you.
Oh, I'll sit.
Good. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I was thinking about when I was first introduced to KM groups, and it was right after I completed the Intro to Meditation class here at IMCC. And our teacher, Allie, talked about KM groups, and the way she talked about it kind of grabbed me. And this idea of having spiritual friends appealed to me. So it seemed like almost right away a group presented itself. And so I jumped at the chance. And really I did it somewhat selfishly, I have to admit, because being brand new to meditation, my thought was that, well, this would be a way for me to schedule in another sit during the month, and nobody will know I'm just trying to build up my practice. And it was that for initially, but it quickly took on a life of its own and became really sacred for me. The group that I was in changed a lot at the beginning as far as people coming and going. But the people that stayed and the consistency that it afforded me, it just really was special. Um, I learned to listen, and I learned to shut off that switch in my head for those 2 hours, so that I could just be present and listening. And it also, frankly, provided me more than just spiritual friends. It provided me friends that I considered special friends in my life. And I'm very grateful for that. I learned so much from people that are so much more intelligent than me in so many ways, and especially spiritually. And once I learned to just be quiet and listen, I learned a lot about, life changes, things change, and that's just the way it is. And I just learned to accept that. Just trying to think. There were just so many moments that I was thinking about when Susan asked me to do this. That it's like a little microcosm of life, and it's just a group of 8 or 10 people that you just learn to love, and they learn to love you, and there's no judging. And it's just complete trust with one another. So you can say what you want or not say anything, and it's okay. There's no judging. It's just a really special thing, and if you get a chance to do it, I highly recommend it. And like life is, things change, groups die out, and then they come back to life again, and then they kind of fizzle out a little bit. But I think everything that I've gotten from KM has been positive and has changed my life completely.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, thank you. Great. Barb Maley. Barb.
So our group, I think, I'm not sure how common this is, but I think we went about it a little. Can you hear me now? Is this better? Is it on? So our group was actually, we were a group of friends first. So I was thinking when you commented that maybe that's unusual. I don't know, but we were friends, and then really it was the outcome of the 2016 election that inspired us to create a group, and we based it on this book. This is Donald Rothberg's The Engaged Spiritual Life. It's a Buddhist approach to transforming ourselves and the world, and we haven't quite gotten there yet, but we're working on it.
To transform yourself or the world, or both?
Both. But so there's 10 of us, and we meet every other week, and we were really called to do this sort of in the wake of the election, and I think we all felt like we wanted a place to process and support one another, as well as deepen our practice and hopefully apply it to the world. And I was in a KM group once before that just wasn't a great fit, and then it kind of fizzled out anyway. But we've hung in there. It's been a year and a couple of months now, and I think we're still figuring it out. But personally, first of all, I'm so thankful and really grateful to have this group of people, because I do feel like it really supports my practice. And for me, I don't know if other people in the group feel this way, but I feel like there's this accountability thing. Like, I've got to walk the walk, I'm in this group and I'm committed, and we're all committed to having a daily practice. And I like that. I like that it makes us have to show up. And I think we're still figuring out how we want to be in terms of, we were really reading the book, which I went on a retreat with Donald Rothberg about 5 or 6 years, not with him, but he was the teacher. Um, and that's his thing. His thing is, really applied social justice, spiritual life to spiritual life. And I read the book back then, and I didn't really, I read the book. And since the election and us reading it as a group, and there's exercises in here and working with anger, and it has a whole new meaning for me, and I just am getting so much more out of it, reading it as a group and talking about it. We don't just talk about the group. We really had, as part of our intention, we wanted to have kind of some social action piece to it, to really bring it to daily life. And we've done one project, but that's not really been our main focus. Like I said, I think we're still figuring that out, and maybe people have different ideas about how they want to be with that. But I feel like I just get so much out of it just coming together every 2 weeks and thinking about this stuff and applying it. And I've seen really concrete changes. Should I be done?
Whenever you feel finished.
I'm going to give you an example, because here's what I noticed since being in a KM group. What I notice is applying the Dharma in everyday life, takes thought and practice and awareness. And what I've noticed since I have been in this KM group is that it arises more spontaneously. So here's my example, and it might seem silly, but it was huge to me. So I was driving home from work, and I had made this real intention to be more kind with especially people I don't know, because I'm from New York. So, you don't have to be kind. And so I was driving home from work, and I was about to turn on to get on the bypass on Locust Ave. And the entrance thing is a two-way. The exit is also a two-way street. And so I was just, it's 5:30 in the afternoon, and I turned and I kind of cut off the person that was coming up. There's not usually anybody coming up, and he just at me. And ordinarily I would have been back. And it instantly, I immediately just thought, that must happen to him all the time. This must be so annoying, the way people cut this corner. And that's not me. And it was just a really nice, this stuff really works. So there's my plug.
Thank you very much, Barb. Beautiful. So Angel Lillar and Bill Detmer together, same group, married. By the way.
Good evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of how the group got started and the kind of dynamics, and Angel's going to talk about kind of what we do when we get together, because it's a book club. We named it the Buddhist Book Club, affectionately known as the BBC. And it came out of a desire for finding a place between solitary practice, extended retreats, once a week, coming here, a place where there was contact with a group of people who you were on the path with. And so the primary goal was really in the spirit of KM, which was to find a group of spiritual friends. And different than being friends in advance, it was kind of an idea with no participants. And so the first thing was, hey, we're going to start a KM group. And secondly, we're going to use the book club concept as a way of going forward. And the reason for that was a desire to deepen our understanding of the Dharma and of practices in kind of that casual, friend-like way that you learn from others who have tips and tricks or lessons learned that you haven't gotten to yet. And for me, anyway, I can say that, you can listen to learned teachers and that you get, a certain thing there, but when you talk to a friend, you get something very different. And so it was that desire to kind of fuse those two in the experience of a group. We had been part of a Sangha that started out in Whitehall about 5 years ago by a guy named Bob Hodges, who's taught here a few times, and he did this model as a teacher-led experience, and it was a very effective way to learn. But we thought, well, why not turn it into a group-led thing, because maybe the same concept, both you could kind of deepen your understanding of the Dharma and the practice and have that bond of friendship and learning informally from others. And so that's kind of how we got started. We've been going about a year. The fun part is because we just sort of announced it, we got, for IMCC, a fairly diverse group from people, early 40s all the way up to Joan is, 88. And boy, is that wonderful to get the whole life spectrum and to hear stories and experiences from the whole life spectrum. People from all over the country with all sorts of different kinds of education and experiences and just different ways of looking at the world. So because we weren't, that was just, we were thrown together that way, it stretched us way outside of our, Dharma boundaries to personal boundaries, not personal boundaries, but personal experiences to see the world through others' eyes like you might not in a group that you choose. So with that, I'll let Angel talk about what we do.
Yes, and then I'll add to that, though, first, that thinking back to doing the MBSR class with Susan, going every week for, was it eight weeks, and really getting to know a small group of people through that, this is another sort of opportunity in that way, where, we just pulled these strangers out of a hat in a sense, and just over a year now have just come to really appreciate them because of sharing with them each week. So we've done a number of different books. We started with a Gil Fronsdale book in which he was Buddhism before Buddha, and he was translating some very early texts, and I actually really didn't like it, even though he is a fabulous teacher. I love listening to his audio Dharma talks, but I think maybe because he's Norwegian, it just didn't have the language because he was translating it into English, and so we abandoned that, and we went on to a Bonnie G book, The Four Foundations of Mindfulness, which was really wonderful, and then we did Sharon Salzberg's Real Love, and now we've just started on Goldstein's Mindfulness. So we're in the big tomb now, and it's we get together, we have a few moments of silence, we check in, and then we just talk about the book and explore the Dharma with each other, relating it to our lives, and it's been really wonderful, and we will continue.
Thank you very much, both of you. I think, can you hear me with this? I think you can. Okay, thanks. Yeah. So I guess you're getting the understanding that these groups are each group has its kind of its own flavor, and we have other groups in addition to these. And I'm going to bring kind of a surprise. Anne Marie, I know, I hadn't asked you. I don't know. Are you willing to talk? Your group is still going, isn't it? Come just for a moment. Would you mind? Their group has a different focus, or has had a different focus. I'm not sure now whether. Come. Thanks.
Well, I would just say it's so lovely to hear about the different groups. One of the really most meaningful experiences for me
You have to hold it up.
being
Yes.
part of IMCC was joining a KM group. And Susan actually kind of got a group of us who did not know each other at all. And it was a pretty small group, maybe 6 of us. And we started gathering once a month, and we too were kind of a book-driven group. We would sit for 20 minutes and then discuss a book for about 20 minutes and then sit again. So, and it was just really very lovely. We have since, because of different things in each of our lives, we kind of fizzled out, but we still see each other here and in the parking lot at Whole Foods and other random places. And the kind of bonds that we built during our time together have remained, and all of those people are so very dear to me. We read a lot of interesting books, including, we tried to tackle the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. That was quite an undertaking, and I don't think we made it all the way through there. But we read various books, and it just really, more than the books kind of gave us a focal point, I think, and the common practice was really bonding. But it was just so refreshing to gather with people and talk about your practice and talk about something much deeper than kind of the surface things that I feel like we often find ourselves talking about as we go about in the world.
You started with a caregiving focus. Did that kind of continue?
Well, and we did have that kind of common thread, and part of what slowly had us fizzle out was some of the demands that people were experiencing around caregiving or the commitments they took on to further that in different ways. So that's what happened. But I don't. Maybe we'll come back together again at some point. But we were together for a good long time. I would say 4 years. And we met once a month for a long time, but then we liked seeing each other so much that we shifted to every other week for a long time, too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that was unplanned. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You know, I'll mention one other type, and I think we can call it a KM group, and we'll talk about that more another time, but that's our White Awake groups. And I know there's some people here who are members of White Awake, which are groups, and I'm a member of one. Patsy back there is we're same group, and I know there are other people in. I don't know if there's anybody else from our group, but other groups. White Awake, that is exploring white privilege and racial issues, and we do it from the perspective, or we try to remember to do it from the perspective of our practice. Now, I have to say, we can get off track very easily because there are an awful lot of really compelling issues that can get you fired up. But the idea is to continue to come back to our practice and to examine these issues, which in fact are our own unexamined issues. It's so very, very rich. So those are groups that are going on, and we will say more about that at other times. But I would like to say that, first of all, the qualifications, so to speak, to be a member of a KM group is if you have completed either the intro course, our introductory 6-week introductory course, or the equivalent, and like MBSR or something like that. And, you know, it'll be on a case-by-case basis. If you've been meditating for 10 years, fine. You may not have to complete the intro course. You know, that'll be okay too. So just letting you know. And another, you do not have to be identified as a Buddhist. Most people here do not, and there's no problem. We are practitioners right now. And if you are, that's great too. So there are flyers on the table back over here talking about the KM groups. The information there, I urge you, pick up a flyer if you think that you might be interested. It's also on the website, but we thought that maybe those of you who don't know about the KM groups might find it interesting, want to take it home with you, think about it a while, and then Cecilia Mills, who is not here tonight, is our KM coordinator, but you can just press a little link online and you'll be in touch with her to complete an application. It's simple. And it's a marvelous experience. You know, in this society that doesn't have a lot of support for this kind of connections, these are really precious. And so I hope you'll consider for yourself joining a KM group. So let me ask, anybody have any questions about it? Yes. Oh, yes, it stands for Kalyanamita. I intended to use the word spiritual friends. I'm trying to get away from the Pali. It's a Pali, ancient Pali term. And that's what our literature usually said, and we're trying to insert the English language term as well, because we don't need to know the Pali. I mean, that's good if we do, but yeah, thanks for asking. Yes. When or where? Where they determine where they're going to. Each group will determine. Usually, it's at a member's house, and they may rotate, or they may. I was in one. We rotated, or still kind of do, and others will meet at one house. It doesn't matter. Each group makes their own decisions about where and when. So meeting at different times, whatever works for group members. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Well, wonderful.